Hi and welcome to my shop tour. We purchased this home about 3 years ago, mainly for the attached RV garage. It measures about 19.5 feet by 49 feet, so it's a nice space for a dedicated workshop. Unfortunately, last summer my wife decided we needed an RV, so now that takes up quite a bit of the space, as you can see. So here's the RV parked in the garage. When we first moved into the new home, I was able to spread out my tools and purchase some new ones. That was great, but since we purchased the RV, I've had to move the tools more to the back of the RV garage. And now, whenever I need to do anything big, I can move the RV to the driveway temporarily and then move it back when I'm done. I'll now move the RV into the driveway so I can continue with the shop tour. Here's the full shop space with the RV parked in the driveway. Over here, I just have storage for miscellaneous stuff. Some tools that I don't use very much. Over here, just a little bit of storage for some projects. And here is a scrap wood cart, as well as storage for plywood. So here's the portable workbench that I can use when needed. Here's the rockler panel cart in order to haul plywood easily from the plywood cart to the table saw. This year I also built this storage cart for it with drawers for storage in the front. With the top, it'll hold one sheet of plywood. Over here, I just have an old workbench with drawers for storage, and then some basic French cleat for on the wall for some tool storage. There's one track for my Makita track saw, and then a second track on the garage door. Here I have a cart for many of my clamps, and then storage for wood. Here's my main workbench, which I built last year. I do have a video for that also. Here's my drill press stand. Again, I did build this cabinet this past year, and this drill press table. Here's some more French cleat storage. Here I have my California Air Tools air compressor, which I love. It's very, very quiet. Storage for sanding disc. I do like Bosch's jigsaw, as well as the Ryobi nailers. I have two of them, one 16 gauge and one 18 gauge. And here's an old grinder, which I don't use very much, but it's there when I need it. Here's the back end of the workbench. And here's my Festool domino, which I love. Bought that several years ago when it was a bit cheaper. And here's the recent purchase and project was a jig to do dowels. Here is my Festool dust extractor. And I've connected it with a Y adapter so I can have two sanders at the same time, or a sander and the Festool, or whatever tool you might want to use with the dust collector. Here is my Jet 5 horsepower table saw, which I purchased when I first moved into this shop. Here's my Incra 5000, which I love. I've also built this little in-feed table, which is removable and use micro jig clamps, so it's easy to remove. Here's the attached router table, which I originally had in my previous small garage shop, but I did put it onto this table saw when I moved here. For the table saw, I have these Jessup stock guides, which I really like. I've also made it removable with these magnets. Great safety feature. This was one of the first things I built when I got this RV garage, was the miter station, just using scrap wood that I had or found in the scrap bins of the builder. And more storage. Someday I'd like to build something a little bit more elaborate for the storage of all the miscellaneous screws and nails. As mentioned, I had to move everything pretty far to the back, but for smaller stuff, everything's fine the way it is. If need be, I can move everything as everything's on wheels. Here's my Grizzly 8-inch jointer. Again, this is another one of the tools I purchased when I first moved in here. And here we have a 15-inch Grizzly planer. Here's my Makita track saw, as well as my DeWalt biscuit joiner, which I hardly use now ever since I got the Festool Domino. Here's my Bally 5 horsepower dust collector, which I love. The only downside is the barrel is quite big and heavy when it's full to empty. I have the dust collector permanently connected to my table saw, and I have another hose which I have with a quick connect, which I can move to various tools as needed. Next to the dust collector, I have the Grizzly 14-inch bandsaw with the riser option installed. Next to that is a Delta scroll saw. And here is my Jessup router table, which I purchased this past year on Facebook Marketplace. And then I did build this cabinet below, which again, I have a video for that also. And I also have it on wheels so I can move it anywhere. Here are Jessup stock guides for the router table. On the back wall, I have a rack for the pipe clamps. Below that is some sawhorses. Here is the station to charge the batteries for the cordless drills. Here I have a workbench, which I had in my previous house. I use this mostly when I'm doing sign carving. And above that, shelves for, again, a lot of the router related stuff. Over in the back corner, I have a sink, which is very useful to clean up. Beside that, I have a cabinet with the Sears oscillating spindle sander and the 10-inch disc sander, both of which are connected to a hose, which I can then connect to my shop vac. If interested, I have a video which shows the construction of this workbench, pretty easy build, as well as the cabinet below, which has drawers and has a space for some storage in the back and space for storage below the table, as well as 2 rocker vices, which again, you can see in the video how they were installed. I also have videos for the build of the drill press table as shown and the drill press cabinet below. I also have a video on this rocker material cart as well as the build of the cabinet below. If interested, I also have the build of this cabinet below the Jessam router table. This concludes this year's shop tour. It's my second one I've done so far. Hopefully you enjoyed and hope to see you again soon. Bye.